What's up, everyone? How y'all doing? It is Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Put them up, put them up, put them up. It is Friday. Oh, break them handcuffs, man. You have been released. It is the weekend, guys. I hope everybody's doing well. It is Friday. Let me say it once again. That means it is a new episode day. Hey, guys, it's Friday, man. What a week. What a day. And just in general, guys, if you haven't, if you're new to the channel, make sure, please, I beg of you, make sure you like, share, and most importantly, subscribe and get all those notifications so you can be updated to all our content, including video and audio. Guys, like I said, when we do these episodes every week on Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, every single week, and new episodes, new episodes, new episodes. And let me say it again, new episodes. Guys, it is episode 94. We're, we are 6 away from the big 100. 6 away. We're almost there, man. We're almost there. And I got such an awesome episode planned out for us today. Guys, if you see these beautiful red tank tops, and I actually look a nice little, all right, whoa, whew. Hey, guys, if you haven't, go on to our bonfire shop. Check this merch out. Let me give you a little bit of it. Right there, the premium unisex tee. And you got so many options on colors, guys. We got the white hoodie. And most importantly, I love this one the most, the V-neck. And you can get those in so many awesome colors. And of course, the long sleeves. I know if you're in Florida, you're probably going to be only rocking long sleeves at nighttime at the minimal. There's some awesome chances to find some colors for you on there. Also, the most very popular ones, still shocks me that these are the most popular ones, is the baseball tees sleeves, the 3/4 sleeve baseball tees. And you see all those awesome colors. And guys, I'll tell you, red and baby blue are our two #1 colors that people buy. I mean, it's crazy. And of course, like the ones I showed before, the V-necks, and here's your options on colors. And of course, the hoodies, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're a lady, the pink are the most favorite ones for the women. And most importantly, the black, the gray, and red all sell at the same number on those. So guys, check it out on the bonfire shop. Also, make sure you put the promo code BUZZ20 and you get 10% off on all your purchases. You can't go wrong. Cannot go wrong. Woo! Hey guys, this has been a great day so far for me, man. Just a lot of good things coming up, man. I just celebrated my son's 10th birthday. 10. Good Lord, have mercy. I got a 10-year-old, ladies and gentlemen. I got a 3-year-old and a 10-year-old. And if you haven't, guys, make sure you tune in. If you know my background of me being a former pro wrestler on the independent circuit as the one and only American Prodigy. Hey, check it out. Check it out. We will be on this Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. Not Tuesday, not Thursday, but most importantly, on Wednesday, doing, that's right, guys, commission talks with my boy Shiz, the Blackheart Linkstick, and Off the Top Ropes. And most importantly, Dre on Wheels from the most infamous 1130 podcast, and yours truly off the Buzzing With Marlowe podcast. And we form commission talks. We talk every Wednesday talking about pro wrestling, WWE, AEW, MLW, New Japan, Impact, you know, the list goes on and on and on and on. But if you don't like wrestling, I still highly recommend you to listen because I have had people have our feedbacks talking about, man, what awesome show. I'm not a fan of wrestling, but man, you, Shiz, and Dre know how to talk, man. Y'all are entertaining as can be and just awesome. Guys, like I said, commission talks every Wednesday. If it is on my platform, it is on Wednesday. If it's on Shiz's platform on Off the Top Roast podcast, it is on Wednesday. But if it's on our boy Dre's on Wheels from the 11:30 podcast, it is on Talk Pro Wrestling that next Friday, the Friday of that week. So those are the ways to stay tuned to watch Commission Talks. We go live on Twitch, Twitter, and most importantly, on Facebook and YouTube. You can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong. And also, guys, every Friday, all three of us on the Commission Talks, we have episodes on Friday, every single Friday. Me and Shiz, we are actually very popular on Twitch. Dre, he's just on YouTube. Dre prefers YouTube. I mean, he does successful work on YouTube. So, guys, make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe to their platforms and their brands as itself because they do wonders. Guys, it's crazy. This is episode 94. 94. Whew. Guys, I know everybody's excited, so let's get into it. So, guys, today my guest will be Jack Houston, author of a great novel. Can't say much onto it, but just the novel is going to be called Nurse Jack. We will get more into it. We will talk about that, guys. We will talk about what inspired him to write this, what all things to look forward to in this book, and some stuff that literally it took him so long to actually want to write this book. So, guys, I ain't gonna waste no more time. Y'all ready? I'm ready. So let's get this show started in 3, 2, 1.
Let's get ready to rumble!
All right, guys, I'm joined with Jack Houston. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Hey, man. Thank you for coming on Buzzing with Marlowe, man.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Jack, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been a nurse my whole adult life. I started school when I was in my teens, went off to school, and basically about 32 years later, here I am. So done a lot of nursing, done a lot of different types of nursing, anywhere from med surge, ICU, a little bit of ER, home health nursing. That's where you go door to door kind of thing, doing treatment. Worked different psych hospitals, different prisons. So I've done a wide variety of things.
Okay. So have you always wanted to be a nurse? Was there chances that you wanted to be a doctor? I know sometimes a lot of people have a higher visual to say, hey, I want to be a doctor, but just really want to just be in that field, be in the medical field. So you would literally just be at any job just to have that dream, that field persona. Is that kind of like what you wanted, or were you dead set you wanted to be a nurse?
No, I wasn't dead set at first. I didn't know what I wanted to do for sure when I was first getting, when you're a kid, you never know what the hell you want to do, really.
Yeah.
From idea to idea. I thought physiotherapy at first or something in the line of teaching or whatever, but I found that you can't just usually get a job as a nurse going to, say, schools, teaching kids and stuff like that. I mean, that seemed like a dream job at the time. Of course, it's very hard to get that. So you have to start at, usually med surge is where people start. Yeah. And that's where all the work is,
Yeah, that's kind of like how I would say, like with a military standpoint, like how you said we're young. You're literally, your first obligation is like, hey, I'm ready to make money. What job is gonna make that the most for me? 9 times out of 10, people believe the military is the way to go right off the rip coming out of high school. You don't want to go to college, so you want to be successful in this standpoint, so you want to go in the military because hey, obviously the military ain't gonna go out of business. So
right.
like you will make money that way. sometimes that's good, and then sometimes it doesn't fall for everybody. So major congrats to you on that in general, because I could tell that field is definitely a tough field to get to nowadays. Like I've seen people that literally I've graduated with, and they've now just gotten their degree to be a nurse
Yeah, it
or
takes a
have
long
that
time.
certification. So yeah, like I can only
Well,
imagine.
they make the school harder and harder every year. Not necessarily
Hmm.
that you didn't have to know anything when I went. It was still very hard then, but they just keep adding and adding stuff, making the bar higher and higher for kids to get through.
Right.
Which
Right.
in a way is good because hopefully the education level's better, but really we're in such a deficit for nurses. A lot of people just
Hmm.
give up on it, don't get through or
Yeah.
drop out. And it's
Hey
almost
man.
why would you be a nurse when you have to go to school almost the same amount of time now as to be a doctor?
Oh,
Make
is that really a rule now? Like you
well,
have
it's
to be a.
it's it's getting there. It's getting there.
Hmm.
And another year or two, and you can, be making $500,000 a year versus 100,000 a year. So if you have the ability to do it, or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
money to go that extra couple of years,
yeah.
it
Absolutely.
just depends.
College is not cheap.
It depends where you are. I mean, some states have different classes. Like there's like condensed programs or whatever. Some areas you can go to school literally a year or two less and be doing the same job as somebody else in another country or another state.
Oh
Had to
wow.
go.
So what's
So,
the minimum that usually for nurses to actually go to college for? What's the minimum?
well, I'm not sure every state. I know it's a 3 years is about the minimum. There's some condensed courses, but
Okay.
it's usually 4 years now. Usually you have to get your degree where I'm living anyway at the time. This is what they tell me. This is the kids coming into school, what they tell me. You used to be able to
Hmm.
go to college around
Right.
here, but now you pretty much have to go to university. And I really
Okay.
can't speak for the whole profession because it's different everywhere,
Right. Okay. Wow. Dang, that's pretty interesting.
Well,
I mean, isn't it like 12 years that you got to go to college for a doctor, or 10 years?
no, well, for a specialty, usually about 7 or 8, depending how quick they go through for to be a doctor. But then if you want to be a specialist, like a surgeon or a urologist, whatever, it's usually another 5 years for each profession. It's not a absolute 5 years, but usually around there.
Okay.
So it's about,
Holy
if you want to
cow.
be a specialist, it's around 12 years.
I remember when I was in school and they were telling us like, yeah, if you want to be a doctor, you gotta love school. And I'm like, hold on, how long you gotta be in school? And they were like, this such and such. I was like, yep, that's off the field
Yeah. Well,
right
I
there.
mean,
No.
to be honest, I absolutely hated every day I ever went to school. I hated it. I'd rather be out slugging it away, working hard somewhere, just sitting there.
Hmm.
Not for me, but I have a lot of schooling because I knew I had to have it. But I
Right.
picked the program this is over 30 years ago. You could go 4 years university, which means you get 4 or 5 months off every summer.
Okay.
The way university does it. Or I picked the condensed course. It was a little over 2.5 years, and I think we had 6 weeks off in that amount of time. So we just
Okay.
banged it out. So you're out in the workforce making money quicker.
Yeah. I
And if you're a
mean,
kid
yeah.
who you hate school, get it over with.
You want to make the money, man. That's all we want. Like, hey, whatever makes the money, whatever
Right.
gets the money there. Especially when you're young, man. Like you to actually say like you're making. I remember I was making 20 something dollars. I made $16 at a warehouse job, and I thought I was making great money just coming out of high school. Like going straight in, like, hey man, 16 something an hour. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm not doing bad for myself. Like I
Yeah.
remember minimum wage was like 8.35 an hour or something like that. So like literally I was like, no, I'm doing good. Like warehouse, cool. Work 4 days, I'm off 3, you can't complain. So and obviously that kind of made it to where it's like, I'm making enough. Why do I need to go to school?
Yeah, that's common, I think, with a lot of us.
It got me somewhat, and then I was like, oh man, I wish I stayed. I went 2 years at FAU and stuff like that, so I got a little bit in, so it wasn't like I fully just like dropped out instantly. I just didn't like it anymore. Like I
Yeah.
said, I wasn't a fan of school, and It was just like a lot of motivation and just died out fast for me more than
Yeah.
anything. Like,
It wasn't so much the learning things or reading the books it was the stress of all the tests and having to do well. And,
oh, I hated tests. I
you
never
know,
did well in tests. Never did well.
I did a lot of schooling afterwards, like through work. They'd send me to special programs. Like when I first get out, you send you to be a telemetry technician, I'm a chemotherapy technician, all these things. They send you for a week here, a week there,
Mm-hmm.
but they pay you per hour and they feed you every
Oh,
day.
wow.
So, I mean, no big deal there. You know, I liked it, but the stress when you're in school, you realize once you're out working as a nurse, that was nothing compared to the stress you have
Mm-hmm.
working, you know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the book that you have wrote. Congrats on that book. I think you've had a lot of success with this book as well.
Well, starting
Congrats
to,
on
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm, working on the marketing thing now. That's, it's kind of new to me. It's my first book. And,
It's a
you think
lot.
you
It's a
write the
lot,
book,
ain't
well,
it?
you find writing the book was the easy part. Now it's getting it out there and letting
Yeah.
people
Oh
see it.
my Lord.
But once people do see it and they buy it, I'm around 4.5 stars out of 5 right now. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I was worried. I thought, I'm going to get like a 1 or 2 or something, you know. I don't know. Like if I can
Yeah.
write, you know, I never really went through for a writer. I'm a nurse, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
really, you know, when you think of it, I've been writing these stories for over 30 years because not the stories in the books, but similar type things. Everything you do with a patient, every incident, every treatment, you got to chart that. And you're always taught chart it as though you're going to go to court because you never know. So
Right.
you know, do it diligently, do the best job you can. So, you know, I didn't write it with colorful metaphors or language like I have in this book, maybe, but, you know, you're used to writing stories. So a lot of these stories, when I was writing them, I'd already written them before, but in a little bit different format over the years, you know.
Right.
So it's, you know, it's going okay. Um, it's a wide variety of stories in it too. And when I wrote it, I thought, well, I don't know who's going to want to really read this. You know, I wrote it for the layman because it's kind of like an informative thing. Like, hey guys, this is what really happens in hospitals. Here's the stuff that you would not believe. And I just put it out there. You know, there's all kinds of things in it: abuse, neglect, tragedy. There's even some funny stories. You know, when you read them, everybody tells me they cry during the book. They got to cry 2 or 3 times reading the book, but they got to keep reading it. You know, but then there's some other stories where they're pretty funny stories too. So I tried to mix it up a little bit. But yeah, it's a different kind of a book than I could find anywhere. So anyway, I didn't know that nurses would be buying it. A lot of nurses read it and like it, but I mean, I thought, well, they wouldn't care. They have their own stories. You know what I mean? But they seem to like it. So the medical people, it's a surprise to me. And I thought maybe just people 35 to 55 would like it, you know, the older people. But here I'm finding there's a lot of young kids reading it. You know, I say young kids like 20, 22, 3. And that really surprised me, you know.
Right.
I have one, you know, you get feedback. People go to goodreads.com or different places and they rate the book and they write little things. Most of them are pretty nice. And this one young girl, she was 22 or 3. She said, I always wanted to be a nurse. Now I know I want to be for sure. So I'm going to school after reading this book. And I thought, wow, that's pretty neat. You know, pretty neat.
Were you kind of hesitant when you first thought about doing this book? Like,
Well,
what made you to actually want to publish it?
Well, you know, I was hesitant. I just wrote it for, you know, something to do really at first. I retired or mostly retired. I do a little bit of work, but, you know, I thought I'd write something, you know, my kids would be able to read or people down the road and they'd kind of, you know, when they're older and they start thinking about their parents, something for them to read, you know. And then a friend of mine encouraged me, you should get that published. You should publish that. And I said, well, I don't think anybody, I don't know. That's kind of a long shot. But anyway, here we are. Got it published and it's doing well. So I'm quite surprised. My family members, they find out I wrote a book and they're like, what? You wrote a book? You know, they're pretty surprised. Eh? I'm like, yeah, I wrote a book, you know.
That's like, thanks for the support.
Well, they know I always hated school and I always, you know, that I'd be the last guy they would think would sit down and write a book, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't just write it. You got to write it, go over it, and go over it again. Your editor goes over it. You go over it again. Like, it's a lot. It doesn't happen overnight. So, but anyway, I was encouraged to get it published. I did, and glad I did now. I'm actually working on the second one. I kind of missed the writing part of it.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so how long did this book, like, obviously, from all the time that you've been as a nurse, like, where did the book basically start out for you to really write? Basically, this is basically a journal of what you went through, what you've seen, what you have witnessed, and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
where did this all really start out at?
Well, I mean, I didn't literally start writing the book until sit down and start writing until a couple of years ago. But the stories, and I didn't know they'd be written someday, but they started as a student. Some of the stories in there, I'm a student,
Okay.
and it takes me right through to the end. There's 36 stories in this. I kind of picked ones I thought, everybody would like. And because you tell stories, you never tell patient's name to your friend and stuff, but you tell stories about what happened. And people are always just hanging on edge. They're like mouth hanging open, like, really, and they always want to hear stories,
Mm-hmm.
So, and a couple of guys I worked with, one guy, I remember, he'd start swearing, and after a bad incident or something, he'd write a book about this place, and he'd throw quite a few colorful adjectives in there too. But anyways, and I in the last few years when I was working, I'm thinking somebody should write a book about this sometime. Like, people should know what we go through,
Mm-hmm.
And then I just, so I started some of the stories when I was a student right through to when I was, finishing up. Okay. So it kind of spans all the different types of nursing that I mentioned at the first of the show. And it's a little bit of everything,
Okay. I like it. So you said you started writing it basically like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
What was your first reaction to some of the stuff that was going on? Like, did you really think this was definitely obviously how we watch these shows like ER and stuff like that? Did you kind of see it kind of like that, or did you already know this is so far not to what the royal reality is of this?
I am a fan of all those shows. I always like watching those shows, but I always pick them apart too. When you're a nurse, you pick them apart, and you're like, well, they wouldn't really do it like that, but I wrote it. This is what really happened, and some of those shows are modeled after things that really happened, give people ideas to write about. But these are all true stories. And I mean, I just wrote it for a book, but then later I got thinking, geez, wouldn't it be neat if it could turn into a show? But anyway, Dan Aykroyd's looking at it right now. I've been talking to him.
Congratulations on that.
Well, I mean, I was just hoping to get a good review from him, but he hasn't got back to me. He said, send it all to me and I'll go over it, give it the proper time. And so talked to him back and forth a couple of times, and it'd be neat. I mean, somebody could, I don't know if I'd ever have the ability to do it, because writing for TV is a little different, and time crunches and that. But they usually have a bunch of writers, but that would be kind of neat. But I mean, I'd just be happy to get a good review from them and keep
plugging. Oh, absolutely.
But it could easily be made into a show. The stories are pretty amazing to people that don't be around the hospital setting and understand. They're pretty shocking stories, some of them, and some of them are just hilarious.
Yeah.
I had my mother do the initial proofreading for me, and she'd be bawling and crying during some of the stories, and that didn't really happen. Oh my God, it's terrible. And then the next story, she'd almost be peeing her pants, laughing, crying, laughing, because I mean, it's stuff that normal people don't see or hear.
It's like an emotional roller coaster.
It is, and I talk about that in the book too. There's one story I talk about nurses. We're people too. And people don't realize that we have emotions. We, when horrible things happen, you see awful things, you see tragic things. I've heard many people say over the years, well, they're used to dealing with that. They're used to seeing that kind of stuff, like somebody coming in with their head, blown off or whatever, and their insides hanging out. Well, nurses, they're used to that. They're trained to deal with that. Well, where the hell was that course? I missed it because there's no course that can teach you how to deal with that stuff and not be emotional over it.
Right.
You see little children, little babies, little 3-year-olds dying, and nurses, they know how to deal with that. No,
Yeah.
you don't. You deal with it like everybody else, but you got to put a smile in the next room and treat your next patient and not be all messed up, you know?
I used to kind of believe that with nurses and stuff like that before because when, I mean, I don't ever really air it out, but when me and my wife, we had a miscarriage before we had our daughter, um, it was just so crazy, like surreal. Like we're breaking down crying, but we saw the nurses like, I'm sorry, and
Yeah.
like cut the screen off and everything, which was sad because we literally were going there just for a checkup and everybody acted like it was fine and stuff. And we were going in the ultrasound just to, hey, we wanted an extra ultrasound just to see the baby. My wife was really excited. This was actually supposed to be her first child. And we were going in the ultrasound. We didn't see a heartbeat. We didn't see anything moving. And then when we looked at it, the nurse turned the thing off and said, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And turned it off and said, I'm sorry, and walked out. And it was just like they had no emotion to it. And we're just sitting there, I'm like, how can you say something like that traumatizing to us,
Right.
and not having a feeling to it? And we had to realize, like, okay, I mean, they go through this regularly. So it's kind of like, and I use the example really much. It's like the military. Like, you are approached to be a weapon. You are showed that you are unbreakable. You have to show boundaries to, like, literally, hey, you have to be tough. You never know what can happen. Say, like, if you go to Afghanistan or something, you're one time you lay off that guard, boom, that's it. It can happen.
Right.
I mean, some of that stuff is, I think, the same thing as with nurses and stuff, because yes, you might have lost this patient, but now you got to go and have a surgery with 3 more patients to make sure, hey, this doesn't happen again. And it's crazy, man. I give you major props on that because that is definitely a tough field to definitely withstand.
Well, it is. And you mentioned how that nurse said she's sorry and just shut it off, left the room kind of thing. And, I mean, there's so many factors that could have been there. But you don't know if that nurse has had 3 miscarriages herself, or if she has a child at home that didn't turn out so well with the pregnancy, and, she's emotionally compromised, or he or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's all those things happen. But we can't tell you, the same thing happened to me and it's bugging me right now and I'm about to cry. I got to leave the room.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those kind of things go on all the time, but I mean, you can't download your problems onto your patients.
Yeah, you can't just assume that, hey,
yeah,
they're unbreakable and things. That's where we get to those things called mental health.
right.
Judging from the background that I've done with pro wrestling, I've seen that numerous times where people, we have to put a smile on our face. Like, literally, we're paid to be on a show. We're paid there to be entertainers.
Right.
And regardless of what's going on backstory, because like you say, and I tell people, like, wrestling's kind of like how the military is. Like, we're not WWE or something like that where they're gone 24/7, but you're leaving all the time. You don't know what your wife's doing. If you're married, you don't know what your girlfriend's doing, your boyfriend, or whatever you're associated with. Like, you don't know what's going on, and you just have to have a smile face, and you got to go out there and perform your best every single night.
No matter how much you're hurting or injured. And,
exactly. And that's one thing that I only lasted 6 years with it, because I was bulletproof.
Yeah.
And for my character, American Prodigy, you could bounce nails off of me, and literally I would just look at it and go, okay, I'm ready for the next. And now when I'm looking back at it, I'm like, damn, like, if I just took care of myself a little bit better and maybe kind of like expressed myself a little bit more to this situation, I might have had a more of a longevity tenure in that ordeal. And I mean, but like I say all the time, man, everything happens for a reason.
Right.
I left on my own feet. I don't say I quit, because if I say I quit, that means I failed. I left at a good purpose. I left on a good term.
Right.
I mean, yes, health wise, I'm 10 times better than I was when I was in the ring. Um, I'm more around with my family, my wife, my son, my daughter. I'm here more with them now. Uh, when I was wrestling, it was weird for me to be home more than 4 days.
Yeah, I would think it would.
It's just
I would think it would have a limited kind of time you can do that because you never know what day you're going to fracture your neck or back. Or I mean,
exactly,
I always
yeah.
admired. I did a lot of martial arts when I was younger, but it was more about form and exercise. It wasn't really into a lot
Hmm.
of the fighting. And I used to watch the wrestling and thinking, man, those people they're good to be up flying off the top of those turnbuckles and landing on their back. Like, I mean, I know the floor gives a little bit this and that, but if you don't know how to fall, you're going to be mangled. You know what I mean? It's
So when
just
I first trained, the guy had me actually jumping in and out of the ring. Like I've seen people getting to use pads, and I would comment on their posts and pictures. I'm like, that must be nice because literally I was laying on ground,
yeah,
and every day he would have me doing this because I was terrified of heights. I'm still not fully like, oh, I love heights. Ordeal. I can look at something and I'm like, yeah, I can probably do this and such and breach that fall type scenario, break
yeah,
that fall, but other than that, but yeah, like you're hitting floor, you're learning like the worst case scenario, you're just falling, but when you keep doing those repetitively, your body is like a baseball bat. I use the metaphor as like, a wooden bat. If you hit it at a certain way, the whole bat just shakes in your hand.
yeah,
And it gives you like that vibrating
right,
sensation where you just got to drop the bat because it's agonizing pain. I
yeah,
say that with the body because you can just hit it. It don't matter if you're avoiding that. Like I've literally said numerous times, I had a neck issue and I never really landed on my head or my neck.
right.
Like, but me bumping repetitively, regardless of
It's a jolting. Yeah,
it's just the whole body. It hits it every single way. It doesn't matter how protective you do. I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter how you bump, even
yeah,
though it's a safe wave bump and whatever, but you still it's gonna hurt. It's still gonna hurt you in the long run. Like
yeah,
regardless of how healthy you've been or whatever, like
yeah,
it's still going to hurt. And sometimes it sucks, but you have to have that mindset like you gotta keep going. If you're gonna do
right.
this, you gotta keep doing it. And major props to you on the nurse door deal with your retirement and everything like that, and with your book because you are expressing what's going around. You're actually fighting the narrative what everybody's got a visual of what a nurse is
Yeah,
or what it is to be in the medical field. I actually have my wife's her stepmom actually is in the medical field and stuff like that,
right.
and you have to be a different type of animal to do a job like that because
Well,
your
exactly.
life your life is in somebody's people's lives are in your hands and
Yeah, and sometimes vice versa because you were talking about injuries, but you would be hard pressed to find a nurse my age that doesn't have a bad back, neck, whatever, from injuries at work. And actually, I read an article of all professions in North America, as likely the same around the world. Nursing is the highest rate of injury.
mhm,
Most people would think a police officer, fireman, but nursing and the highest rate of nursing injuries is psych nursing because we wrestle with people all the time. Sometimes they're
mhm,
just bad people. Sometimes they're out of their mind because they have psychosis. They can't help it. But when they attack you or somebody else, you can't just go putting the knuckles to them and put them down. I mean, it's not a street
mhm,
fight. I mean, you have to subdue them. But when you have to subdue somebody without hitting them, without hurting them, we get hurt all the time.
mhm,
We get
mhm.
beat up, we get concussions, broken bones. I knew one nurse, she was taken hostage for a while, you know.
Oh
Um,
wow.
a guy with a pen in her eye, the guy trying to get out, and I mean, all those kind of things happen. Nurses get abused. Sometimes they get raped. They get pulled into a room and beaten or raped. And, if you're working in a prison or some psych hospitals, these happen. I've had murders on my ward, you know, um, in a psych hospital. So you never know when your time's coming. And
Is that what you worked, was the psych hospital area?
well, I did. I've worked in pretty much everything, but the last few years when I was working in psych, that's what it was. There was just I couldn't count how many skirmishes, little fights I've been in. I call them fights. You say subduing a patient, but they're kicking the hell out of you. Feels like a fight. You know what I mean? I've been in sometimes 3 or 4 a day. You have 3 or 4 codes a day where, somebody's kicking the hell out of a nurse, and other people we run over to try to help, and you got to put them in the box. That's the seclusion room. We call it the box. And it is not easy. Even wrestling with a 90-pound old lady, when the adrenaline's going and they're psychotic,
it's a different
you
animal,
can get
man.
hurt. You can get hurt easy. I've seen I got called to help some of the nurses on another unit one time when I was working med surge. There was a woman trying to leave the hospital. She was, I think, 82, something like that. And just as I got there, she looked like she had good form and everything. She kind of stepped ahead. I could see her hips and everything move. She jabbed this girl in the nose. Third nose she had busted, and she's popping.
Oh, wow.
Everybody. Yeah. And they were trying to keep her in because she was out of her mind. And if she get out on the street, she'd walk on the road, or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So nobody was trying to be mean to her, but of course it would feel that way to the old lady that didn't know where she was. And, but man, she hurt 3 nurses. So I had to kind of pin her against the wall until some other people could come and we could gently get her back into the bed or get her tied down, whatever, And mm-hmm. I was a student at the time, and I felt like such a monster. Here I am, a big guy, pinning this little old lady against the wall. Like, I mean, what do you do, So you can imagine a guy 300 pounds doesn't want an injection that he has to get. And you go to the cell, and I've seen this happen, and this guy that looks like The Rock is standing there totally naked, smothered in baby oil. So, yeah, try to get a hold of him to give him a needle. You're getting hurt there, boy.
Oh, man, I can only imagine. So what's the most common injury that nurses and doctors would have?
Well, I would say back injury. And it usually depends what field you're in. But even if you're not in a situation where you have to fight all the time, med surge would be your place. You get a lot of back injuries. Everybody listening has heard, well, you lift with your legs and you learn how to lift with your legs. But just imagine this. Try to walk up to a bed. Okay. So your knees are pressed against the bed and you're standing upright. Right. And you got some big fat guy, 300 pounds, and you got to shift him in the bed or lift him up. How do you bend your knees? They don't bend into the bed. So you're always compromising your back, and they have these special lifts you're supposed to use. And I mean, they don't work. I mean, even when you're doing what you think is a good transfer, I remember transferring a guy one day and he was out of it. He clawed my face. He threw up on me, wet himself. And, I mean, I'm covered in everything. Feces, urine, and he threw up on me and scratched my face. Now, how do you just drop that guy? You know what I mean? You got to get him to the chair or back into the bed. It's not his fault. Like, he's out of it and very ill. So, and I'm a big, fairly strong guy. Like, there's a lot of little nurses, I'm thinking, how do they ever do it? I mean, I've hurt I don't know. I've heard everything nursing, the only part of my body that doesn't ache is my hair, I mean, tore both shoulders, trying to wrestle with a guy one day. He was pounding one of the nurses. So I pinned him and I was grabbing his shoulders, and I had to be really careful because he's trying to bite me, and he had AIDS. And he was in there. He was biting people, and he had AIDS. He was doing it on purpose on the street, and he got charged for it. He was trying to give people AIDS. He was ill, but he was also pretty mean. So I'm trying to hold him, and you got to twist his shoulders a certain way so that he can't get his mouth to my hands. And so I ripped both shoulders in the one day. Like, I mean, how do you not? And man, I mean, that's just another day at work.
That's the sad part. Like, that's just another day at the job. Like,
well,
literally how people sit here and complain about being at a desk or working warehousing gigs or restaurants and stuff like that. Like, sometimes you can have those crazy moments of nights. But one thing I preach on Buzzing with Marlowe, man, is literally somebody else is having what your worst night is, somebody's having worse than you.
Oh, yes. And I know people have had it a lot worse than I have as a nurse. I'm just one in millions of us, but
Exactly.
I wrote a whole chapter about injuries and stuff like that on the job. And a friend of mine, he got stabbed in the hand. He got stabbed in the hand because he put his hand up in front of his face. The guy was trying to stab him in the face. And so he put his hand up and the knife went right through his hand. It was back and they still use steel cutlery on the wards. So he had to go over, down to ER and he got patched up and come back to work the next day, had to work with the same patient, The patient comes up to him, how's your hand? Are you okay? Well, sorry about that. But he was mad at the time, and the next day he's apologizing to him, but he's still got to work with the guy and never know him when he's going to go out of his head again,
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that's crazy.
It just goes on and on, but that's an interesting chapter for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of narrow it down a little bit. So, tell us a little bit of some of the funny stories that are in the book. Talk about some of those.
Well, the funny stories, I remember. Well, it seems funny now, but it didn't seem funny at the time. I went in, I was doing some home health, what we called it in Houston. It's different wherever you go, different names for these agencies. And anyways, so I go to this house and I was just a kid. I was only out of school about a year, maybe 2. And I was doing what we call accessing a portacath. And that's a little, when somebody needs IVs or blood drawn a lot, but they really don't have many veins because they're really sick or have cancer or whatever.
Right.
They put a portacath. It's about the size of a big marble, and they put it in your chest. They sink it under the skin. They attach it to the ribs. And so there's a little lap of skin that goes over top. So you can see a bump in the skin, So all we have to do when we need it, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's every day, you just push a needle through the skin and you've accessed this portacath. So when you're first doing it, it's a little intimidating because on the other side of that portacath, there's 3 little luminants. They're called little wee tiny tubes that go in towards the patient's heart. So you don't want to get it infected. You know what I mean? And there's a certain tray you use with all the certain vials and stuff to clean it with. And I only had one tray with me. I was out on the road, right? So I kind of went over it in my head how to do it. Like I'd done one before, should be able to do it. A little bit nervous. So I go in and there's a woman answers the door, an elderly woman, and I was there to see her husband. She goes, oh, he's in there, points to the bedroom. So I went in and I'm doing my thing. The guy's pretty quiet, not saying much. He had dementia. And just as I access it, in other words, I put the needle in, he kind of comes awake and more lively and starts punching me in the head. Well,
oh, wow.
I mean, he can't remember anything. He's got dementia, right? And it was advanced. I didn't know he was that bad at the time. So all he knows is he wakes up in his bedroom and there's a man standing over him, sticking him in the chest with a needle. He doesn't even remember that he's got this thing in there. So he's making a fuss. And I'm trying to block the punches to my head, trying to protect the sterile field with my other hand, because I'm halfway through this procedure. And then I hear a barking. And this dog comes in, and it was a little dog, but they can do a lot of damage too. And I'm attacking his owner. That's all the dog would know, right?
Okay.
And I thought, oh shit, I'm gonna get bit bad here. Well, he came toward me growling and growling and growling, and I thought, uh-oh. Next thing I know, he doesn't bite me. He jumps up and he starts humping my leg. He's just pounding his little pecker into my calf, and I had a pair of shorts on. So he's just nailing my calf, and I'm shaking him. And I yelled at his wife. I said, can you help me here? Can you help me? And I look up, and she just kind of looks up from her knitting. She's sitting in the rocking chair beside the bed and just kind of smiles and then looks back down at her knitting and keeps going. And I thought, well, that's a big help, And I mean, not that I don't want to abuse a dog or anything, but I mean, he's raping my leg. So you can imagine I'm standing, I'm holding, my hand across the sterile field. I'm blocking punches with the other hand, and I'm standing on one leg and trying to shake this dog off. And finally, I just give him a real good kick, and he flew off and hit the closet door about 5 feet away and slumped down, kind of whimpered and left. And I kind of felt bad I did that. But, I got to protect the patient, first of all. I can't get that infected. So anyway, I packed up and I left. Well, doesn't she let the dog out with me? So this dog's just growling the whole way, following me to the truck. And I got in the truck. It didn't bite me, but then it just kind of looked up and gave me a look like, and you can't really describe it, but you knew what he was thinking, like, you prick, and this is all over my tire. And I thought,
wow.
it was just kind of, when a dog's mad, they'll do stuff like that. Eh?
Yeah.
And I was shaking my head thinking, what the hell kind of what a job, So everybody back at the office, when I got back there, they enjoyed hearing that story as I was washing my leg with the cloth, like it was, kind of funny at looking back on it. But, there's things like that happen. There's all kinds of funny things that happen at the hospital. And we joke around a lot, actually, like, because if you ever watch the show MASH, a lot of older people, I don't know if you've ever watched it, but we used to watch it all the time. And, they're always, Hawkeye's always making fun of everybody and pulling jokes and things to relieve stress. So we're the same way. We have to do all kinds of things to relieve stress. And sometimes the way we talk, you'd never want anybody out in the street hearing you, you know what I mean? But we're not making fun of patients and stuff and picking on them and that kind of thing, but we're joking about stuff because it's a coping mechanism, So we do a lot of that, but there's a few funny stories in the book. And there's one I won't get into too much, but it involves a man with total body lice and vermin, a little fella that, he really was fascinated with sheep. Let's put it that way. So,
counting sheep is a whole different reference now.
Well, he liked hugging them and stuff. But anyways, so he told me anyway. But anyway, I won't tell any more because that would be a spoiler. But there's a lot more to that story, and it's kind of funny.
Okay.
But I threw a few funny stories in, but there's a lot of them that are just shockers, like drug abuse, nurses taking patients' drugs, going beside the bed and sticking themselves in the butt with the needle instead and giving the patient saline,
Whoa.
Stuff like that, eh? We had, the drug abuse is amazing. I think this one hospital I worked at for around 4 years. And in that time, while I was working, we had a total, I think, about 5 nurses where the police come in, wrestle them down, cuff them right there on the floor while they're working because they got caught, stealing drugs or whatever, And that's just while I was working. The drug abuse was rampant, And it's not that all nurses are drug addicts, but when anybody is under a tremendous amount of stress, like a nurse is, it's easy to start self-medicating and stuff. Like a lot of nurses have PTSD. There's many nurses have PTSD. And like nobody wakes up one day and says, I'm going to start screwing around with drugs and become a drug addict. Nobody does that. But it happens, right? And it happens to a lot of nurses. One of our docs one time, he was just a wonderful man. Like everybody liked him. And in Texas, you have a lot of people without a lot of money, a lot of Mexicans coming up, and they don't have a lot of money. And he would help them. And some of them, wouldn't be registered, whatever. He would just help them. Never charge him. He was and he could, he was a young guy, about 40 or so, made lots of money, and doctors make lots of money. He could have made a lot more, but he would just give them treatment. But so here's this wonderful guy, leaves work one day, and then a few minutes later comes roaring back on his Harley, still wearing his scrubs and everything, and drives right through the big bay doors of the ER, smashes right through them on the Harley, lays it out, it's spinning against the desk, and he's trying to flush a bag of drugs as the police come in and slam him down to the floor. And, there's this wonderful guy, somehow got into drug issues. Took him a long time. He had to go back and rehab this and that. And he's back working now. I'm glad he is, because he's a good man, But even good people, when you're around this kind of environment, you can get into a mess.
It breaks your comfort zone. That's for sure.
Yeah, it does. But, I don't even second chances. And this guy, he was a good man and he should be working. He helped so many people, But that being said, you have to be careful. People get into issues, A lot of drug abuse, a lot of drinking on the job. You're a nurse and you got a bottle of whiskey stored in the fire cabinet. You just undo the screw when you get to work. And the patient
comes the nurse.
Yeah, the patient runs and you want some mix? I can go get you some mix over at the canteen. Yeah, get me a bottle of Pepsi or like patients in psych hospitals, they've been there for years. They know the nurses, they know certain nurses come in, oh, you forgot your pillow, madame. You forgot your pillow. You want one of mine? Because she's going to sleep all night, bring your own pillow to work. the head nurse, the charge nurse. So, I
Ugh.
mean, yeah, there's a lot.
I love how you filled us in with stuff like that, man. That's crazy. That's oh, God. Oof. That
I'm
just
I'm sort of losing your volume there.
visualize when we think of doctors or any necessarily anything in that type
There
of
we go.
background. And I love how you've actually been able to fill us in a little bit on stuff like that. So, Jack, we're basically coming almost to the end of the episode. If you really wanted to pitch somebody about your book, how would you do it, and what would be some of the stuff that you would be able to sell to the audience to want to buy your book?
Well, anybody who wants to buy the book, first of all, it's easy to get. If you go to my website, it shows all the different places you can order it. It's nursejack911.com. And then the bottom of that page, there's about 10 different platforms you can, order it, like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, it's a big list. And you can order it from, any bookstore too. It's on shelves in some of them, but it's hard to get all on the shelves right away because there's just so many books out there. But it's gradually coming. But the thing I would say about this is it's stories about shocking stuff, but it's not written just to say how bad nurses are. It's about shocking stuff, and it tells at the end, yeah, this is horrible what this guy did, but can you imagine if your family was that ill and did that? You know what I mean? And how you would feel. Confidentiality. I talk about all those kind of things, and people don't realize what people go through every day. And I guess one thing I want to tell people is you have to ask questions. Some people put a nurse or a doctor up on this big pedestal like we know everything. Oh, the nurse said, so you have to do it. No, you don't have to. But if you think something is going wrong or somebody's doing something wrong, with treatment, speak up. Speak up and ask questions. And sometimes when you ask those questions, the nurse will thank you because they were making a mistake and the IV bag they hung was wrong or whatever. It can happen. It's easy to happen. But, when you never ask, you don't know. I had a patient one time, his sugar was down to 18. He was basically in a coma. And his wife said, I've been worried about him all day. He should be eating. Well, he had an NG tube. Tube goes down your nose, and that's how he's being fed, because he's pretty sick with other things. But he's also diabetic, and he pulled his IV out, not his IV, his nasal gastric tube out in the morning. Well, the nurse still gave him his insulin, and he had to wait for an x-ray to confirm placement of the tube. Didn't eat any lunch, and he had a big whack of insulin. And I'm going in to give him do his blood sugar and going to give him more insulin, and he's not responding. And his wife's like, I've been worried he should be waking up to eat. Well, his blood sugar was 18. Like it should be, 80, something like that, between 80 and 120 kind of thing. And so basically he was unresponsive. And if I'd have started my shift at the other end of the hall, he might have been dead by the time I got to him, Wow. And the report from the nurse was he'd be kicking and squealing all morning. He'd be upset, and he pulled out his tube, and he's chilling now. He's chilling. He's chilling now. Like he's chilling. He's almost in a coma, So, I mean, when things aren't quite right, don't be afraid to ask. In fact, you should know what's going on. If you got a loved one that's in the hospital, you should know about their illness. Because somebody's diabetic, you should learn what diabetes really is, because when your wife or son or whoever is sick, you got to know. Just don't depend on the nurse to do everything and do it right. Now, most times they're very good. I talked about the bad stories, but a few bad apples, right? That's all it takes. So be informed and know what's going on. There's I don't know. There's a lot of things that people just don't realize that needs to happen in a hospital, and it just doesn't happen. I mean, when I tell the stories, I tell about the bad stuff, and it's horrifying in that. But in the end, I try to reroute people and but this is the way it normally happens, and this is what you can do to prevent it.
Okay, I like that, man. That's definitely a different perspective for sure. Wow, I didn't know that you could. Talk to the nurse or something like that, because I'm thinking they know what they're doing. This is their job and stuff like that. not knowing, hey, this nurse has probably been here for almost 20 hours. I
Hmm.
mean, Lord have mercy. Like, those are some things. Like, I know, I like an example when my mom goes to the hospital. My mom asks so many questions. And sometimes it drives me nuts. I'm like, Mom, you're not a doctor. Stop asking. Just, is there blood pressure? This blood pressure? I'm like, Mom, stop asking. They know what they're doing. They're good. And one of the ladies actually got corrected because my mom reminded someone about, can't remember what was it, some type of medicine or something, and the nurse was like blown away that my mom corrected her before she put in the wrong medicine into somebody.
Oh, it's
And
yeah.
I was like, all right, mom, ask away, because like my mom saved that person, because you never know what would happen with that medicine or something like that. So definitely intrigued to know on that. Guys, just a quick reminder, all those links that he is talking about, the link that also buy his book will be below on the episode. All of it right there. His social medias and stuff like that. To follow and look up to find out more info about this book. And also, he is on the verge of making number two. And he is also, maybe in the near future, maybe going to get a movie or deal or a TV role with this awesome novel. Jack, this, you got any last words you want to do? Any shout outs, plugs, or anything like that?
Not a whole lot. Just yes, I would love it if. I mean, I'd like the whole world to buy my book. Who wouldn't, right? But I mean, if you do buy it and read it, I love to get feedback. So please do give
Mm-hmm.
please do go to either Goodreads.com or wherever you buy the book. If they have a way to rate it, I would love to see that. So and even if there's something you don't like about it, let me know. Because that helps me
Okay.
with the second book. I've had a lot of people requesting me, give you nice feedback and say, I can't wait for the second one. Please keep writing and all that kind of stuff. And so those kind of things are nice to hear. And, people
Mm-hmm.
want to hear more. So just, yeah, read it, enjoy, and don't be afraid to ask questions of any healthcare professional you're dealing with. Doesn't mean they're stupid and don't know what they're doing. Sometimes they'll say, oh, well, because of this, and this, that doesn't mean, you know what I mean? And they'll straighten
Mm-hmm.
you out and they'll give you a good explanation. And then all of a sudden it makes sense to you. But it's okay to ask them.
Yeah.
Especially a doctor. Most people are afraid to ask a doctor something. They're
Right.
people too. So they make mistakes, and if they can't handle a couple of questions, then they're in the wrong business because they're supposed to be able to talk to people and.
Mm-hmm.
So ask questions and make sure everything's going right.
All right. I love it. Jack, I appreciate you doing this, man. This has definitely been a very educational chat and very entertaining in ways, because the funny story kind of like mellowed down like what we were getting into when we were getting real serious. Guys, highly recommend to check his book out. It's called Nurse Jack. Like he said, he's on the verge of writing book number two. This one has been a very good success so far. Let's continue it on. Also, guys, like how I am on my podcast, leave some comments. Give some good feedback about it. Not necessarily good feedback. Let him know what you feel about this book. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, when I mention some of the real stories in my life, I literally go, you know what? I want your real feedback on it. Like, sometimes I've actually had to send some of my content that I haven't published yet into like some of the people I trust, just to be like, hey, do you think this is right to put? Do you think this is good to put on the show or something like that? It's not necessarily the guest, it's just some of the stuff that we talk about in detailing and stuff like that. And I have a very strong circle of the people that I literally will go to before I obviously publish an episode or something like that. So guys, definitely give some feedback on it. Leave it some ratings. Make this book grow. If you don't like it, let him know so he can figure out, hey, explain to you what happened in that scenario for it to get to that way. This has been an awesome episode. Jack, I appreciate you doing this, man. You are more than welcome to come on at any time again. You just let me know and we will set this up. And most importantly, man, I definitely appreciate you bringing this awesome novel onto the Buzzing with Marlowe podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I was really happy to be here and I had a fun time too. It's great. I'd love to come back sometime. That would be fun.
Absolutely, Jack. I appreciate it and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, guys, get the go home cue. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Jack Houston for coming on today, having a great chat with us, talking about his novel, Nurse Jack. Man, what's some of the stories that he was talking about? That kind of like gave me some of the stories like I remember in my wrestling days, some of the stories I've heard from wrestling, um, and not necessarily just anything like that, just in whole. Like I remember when he was talking about like when nurses and doctors are people, literally you're looking at it like, okay, all right. My references would be like school teachers, like they're people at school, but literally you don't know what the life is outside of a teacher after the bell rings and the kids go home. And I remember when I had that experience with my teacher. Shout out to my teacher, my old teacher, Miss Amos. Um, Basically, I call her my mom in ways because she helped me in so many ways, so many ways. Teachers are people too, man. They're moms, wives, um, life supporters, stuff like that. Like people are people in general, regardless of what occupation. Just be nice to people, be respectful, love each other. Those are the biggest things that we're going to preach about this today, guys. This has been episode 94. Congratulations. We are 6 away from the big 100. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Like I said, the links are below. Check it out. Go buy the book. Go give this man a good shout out. Um, Let him know. Let him know. Also, guys, make sure you, most importantly, not ever going to forget it, never will. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to all our platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and most importantly, guys, I'm randomly on TikTok. I'm still learning how to do that. I'm only promoting my podcast. I'm not doing all that other stuff. I mean, I'm just old school now, man, guys. That's y'all's thing. But I will be on TikTok just to give like little snippets of our episode so you can go check out the full episode. Also, guys, like I said, every Friday, like you're watching right now, new episodes published live on our Facebook group off the Buzzing with Marlowe Facebook group, the real Buzzing with Marlowe Facebook page, YouTube, we are on live, Twitch, we're on live, and most importantly, our Twitter accounts, including the American Prodigy's Twitter account as well, because that is the only thing I'm active on when it comes to the active standpoint of American Prodigy's Twitter, or any social media account. Also, guys, we also put little snippets on Instagram. The links are below. You just click it, go on it, follow it, like it, and most important, we hope you subscribe to our channel so you can stay in tune with all our new content. Guys, this has been a great chat. Also, guys, make sure y'all reminder Wednesdays we do commission talks. That's right, guys. 3 podcasters into one, and we form the commission. We talk about pro wrestling, sports, NFL, NBA, you name it. We just did an episode for my boy's recent birthday. Shout out to my boy Shiz Linsky from Off the Top Roast Podcast. Super amazing just to celebrate that moment with him. Really awesome. Guys, stay in tune with their podcast, their platforms, and everything like that. Guys, this has been another great episode of Buzzing with Marlowe, and I will see you later. Have a good one, guys. And most importantly, be safe. Do what you got to do. Stay out of trouble. And you know, we will be back when we have more buzz down the road. Buy the merch, man. Later.